Hi, welcome to Learning Kitchen Live, episode 21. My name is Jessica Burch, and I'm one of the dietitians at Community Servings, but I'm working from home these days, so welcome to Home Edition and my kitchen. Today I'm really excited to share two of my favorite recipes with you for, more comforting meals. We're gonna take a special twist on them and take out all the added salt and added sugar, but we're gonna add in lots of extra spices and other ways to kind of bump up the flavors and still make them super flavorful, so you won't even notice that there isn't any added salt or sugar. The first recipe we're going to be doing is apple hand pies, and these are super easy to make, really fun if you've got kids at home. They're a great, yummy, warm treat at the end of the day. And then our second recipe is rice and beans, but it's not your typical rice and beans. So I'm going to pack it full of veggies. We're going to add a lot of really delicious warming spices and kind of give you a new spin on maybe a very familiar dish. With that being said, let's get started. So if you're just tuning in a few minutes late, this is Learning Kitchen Live, episode 21. I'm Jessica, one of the dietitians at Community Servings, and we're about to start cooking. So for the hand pie recipe, this is like one of the easiest recipes that you could possibly ever do for a dessert. First, when we talk about why we want to cut back on sugar, it's because there's so much added sugar in so many of the foods that we eat from day to day anyway. So if we can find little ways to cut back on that added sugar, it'll make a big difference in the long run. Sugar gives us energy, it gives us calories, and if we don't use those extra calories, our body doesn't waste them. It doesn't say, oh, I don't actually need this, I'll just get rid of it. It sticks it to our thighs, our hips, our stomachs, our cheeks, wherever we end up storing it. The other thing is that added sugar can make our blood sugars uneven, and whether you have diabetes, are at risk for diabetes, or even if you're not, trying to keep our blood sugars more stable is an important thing we want to try to do to maintain optimal health. So that's why we want to try to cut back on sugar, and that's why this recipe has no added sugar in it, but it's still going to taste delicious because we're going to use some different techniques and spices to enhance that sweetness from the apples naturally. The other thing, so the recipes will be posted underneath the video in the comments section at the end of this presentation. And if you look at the recipe for this dish, it says to buy the pre-made pie crusts, not the ones that come frozen in the pan already, but the ones that you roll out. And each hand pie will use half of one of those rounds. And you just quarter the pie crusts and then fold them or pile them on top of each other. I actually had leftover pie crust that I had made for Thanksgiving, so that's what I'm using today. So mine is a little circle that I used a bowl to trim the sides or size it to, instead of a quarter of a pie, if that makes sense. If you want to make your own pie crust, it's super easy. I just realized that a lot of people don't really have the time or the thought to make pie crust on your own. I use Mark Bittman's recipe, and all this is you take a Cuisinart and you put 1 cup, 3 tablespoons, so 1 cup and an additional 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and then either 8 tablespoons of unsalted tub margarine that's chilled so it's hard, or 1 stick of unsalted butter chopped up into the Cuisinart with a half a teaspoon of salt. Oh, there goes my oven, it's heated and ready. There's our added salt, but if you buy a pre-made pie crust, I promise there's going to be added salt in that as well. You pulse that for about 10 seconds, and then you pour it into a bowl, and you add in 3 tablespoons of ice water, form it into a ball in your hands, put it in the freezer for about 15 minutes to half an hour, and then bring it out and shape it. So that recipe in and of itself says it's enough for 1 pie round, but I ended up with a lot of extra dough. So I think either I roll it really thin, Mark Bittman has huge pie tins, or it is actually enough for a little bit more. So I would say that if you were going to use that recipe, you would probably end up with enough crust for at least 3 hand pies, if not more. All right, so all that being said, let's start making our pie. So I've got my pie crust, and what we're gonna do is see, this is so easy. These are just sliced apples. I took the core out. I left the skin on. I like to leave the skin on because it gives a little bit more texture. It's giving you more vitamins, more minerals, all those good things that we want when we're trying to get the best things that we can from the foods that we eat. And if you can see, I'm leaving a little bit of a ring around the outside, and I'm just gonna pile all of my apple slices in here. Now, if you're using the pre-made slice or cut up pie crust, you might end up, your shape would be different. So you're not gonna have this little round in the middle, but you just put as many apple slices as you can in that space, leaving about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of a lip around the edge. Let's see, I think that's about as much as my pie crust is gonna take. I wanted to squeeze these all in. This is 1 apple sliced. And then on top of this, I'm gonna put a little bit of cinnamon. So cinnamon has no sugar in it, but we associate the flavor of cinnamon with sweet things. And so if we include it in dishes to enhance the sweetness or enhance our feeling of the sweetness, then we're playing a really nice little trick on ourselves, because we're making a really yummy dessert, but not with a lot of added sugar. So this is about a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon that I'm adding for that whole 1/2 of an apple. You can also do apple pie spice, is that what it's called? Apple pie spice, apple pie spice mix. You can do cloves, nutmeg, allspice, whatever you like. And then I've just got a little cup of water here. I'm gonna dip my finger in there and go around that edge. And this is gonna form a little bit of a glue so that my top will, whoops, knocking my apples over, so that my top will stick. And then I've got my top here, and I just noticed it's a little bit thicker. I didn't roll it quite as evenly right there, so I'm just gonna move it around my fingers a little bit, even out the edges. And then we're gonna push that down on top. And if you're doing this, do a better job than I just did, and make sure that your top is a little bit bigger than your bottom, so that so you can cover all those apples. But I think this is gonna work out fine. So I'm just gonna press this in and fold up my edges so that they pinch together. And again, if you've got little people at home, this is so fun for them. And then they get this great treat that they made for themselves. And it's a way healthier option than a lot of the other desserts that are out there. All right, almost done. Easy peasy. Oh my gosh, like how easy was that dessert? And then it's fine like this. I'm gonna just take a fork and just go around the edges really quick, just to kind of extra mush those edges together so that I'm sure that nothing leaks out. And so the apples are gonna steam themselves as they cook. They're gonna get soft. Those yummy natural sugars in the apples are gonna caramelize from the heat, and you're going to have this delicious cinnamony seasonal yum without any added sugar. Sharp knife. I'm just gonna put a few slats in the top to release steam. And then, let me move these things out of my way. This next step is optional. I forgot to do an egg wash for my Thanksgiving pie, so you don't have to do one, but it puts a nice little shine on your pie, which makes it look ever so much fancier and professional. And you know, we all want those things, right? You eat with your eyes first. So I'm gonna put my pie on my parchment paper here, And you can use a pastry brush like this. You can use fingers, you can use a spoon, you can use a fork, whatever it is that you have, to just spread a thin layer of egg wash over the top. And all this egg wash is about a tablespoon of water that's mixed up with 1 egg. I'm gonna just go around the edge and voila. Beautiful little, did I actually cut that deep enough? I did. Okay, let's move this out of the way. How easy, how simple. It's gonna be beautiful and very delicious. So I'm gonna stick this in the oven. It's heated to 350 and it should cook in somewhere between 25 minutes and half an hour. We'll check it after about 20 and just kind of keep an eye on it. Okay. So if you're just joining now, this is Learning Kitchen Live, episode 21. My name is Jessica Burch. I'm one of the dietitians at Community Servings, and we're doing some comfort foods without the added salt and added sugar. So we've got our apple hand pie in the oven, and now I'm going to start on my rice and beans, which is not entirely true because I did cook the rice ahead of time because it does take a little while and I wanted to make sure that it was done. But let's start by talking about the rice. Well, I'll show it to you in a minute. So, rice and beans I think gets a pretty bad rap because people think of it as just a carb-dense meal with maybe a little bit too much salt and not a lot of other things to offer. But I'm going to show you that that's not true. We can really pump up this meal and make it not only something that's really cozy and familiar and delicious, but full of really wonderful things for our bodies. So the first thing that I do with my rice and beans is I use brown rice. So brown rice is a whole grain, and that means you get all of the vitamins, all of the minerals, all of the fiber, and all of the protein that rice has to offer. If you use white rice, all you're really getting is the carb. We know that by eating whole grains, we can improve our blood sugars. We can keep them more stable. We also know that when we eat whole grains, we can lower our blood pressure. It's proven. There's lots of research out there that shows us that whole grains can help to lower blood pressure. If you've tuned into any of my other previous classes, we've talked a lot about blood pressure and how important it is to make sure that it's not too high. The main reasons, or the only reason really, is that chronic hypertension or high blood pressure can lead to lots of medical conditions that we don't want to face. Things like heart attack, aneurysm, stroke, vision problems, metabolic disorders, dementia, kidney disease. All of these things are the result of having, or can be the result of having high blood pressure. If we can avoid that by putting effort into paying attention to the foods that we eat, by adding things like whole grains into a meal like rice and beans, why not take advantage of that? Why not set ourselves up for better success later? Use food as medicine now so we don't have to take medicines in the future, right? So I use my brown rice, and I'll tell you how I make it. Again, it's going to be in the recipe posted in the comments section at the end of the class. But all I do is I take my brown rice, about a cup of brown rice, and I put it in a saucepan with a 28 ounce can. I meant to keep it out, but I already put it in the recycling, of no salt added diced tomatoes. I then put in a cup and a half of water, and then my spice mix. And it's whatever spice mix you like. So I use chili powder, cumin, garlic powder, and oregano, and a little bit of black pepper. You can mix and match the spices that you like, but that's what I normally end up using. And it gives a huge, huge bang of flavor to the rice. You bring it up to a boil, you lower it to a simmer, and you let it cook. Now, a lot of time I hear the biggest reason people don't eat brown rice is because of the texture. It's a little bit crunchy. And yes, it's gonna be crunchier than white rice because it has the full husk on the rice. It has all that fiber and those vitamins and those minerals, and that's what gives it its crunch. If you find the texture of the rice is a little bit off-putting, you can add more water after it's done cooking. I would do about 1/4 cup at a time just to make sure that you're not getting too much water and the rice doesn't turn all gummy. And just taste it every few minutes and see if the texture becomes more pleasing. Also, you'll get used to eating brown rice. Give it a try. I really encourage it. So that's how we make the brown rice. Now, I will show you how I actually make the beans. So, let's get this going. So I've got my little saucepan here, and somewhere over here I have olive oil. So, oh, I can already smell the cinnamon from the apples starting to heat up, and it smells delicious. All right, so for my beans, I am going to start by putting in a lot of vegetables. So cooked vegetables, sauteed vegetables bring an extra layer of flavor to everything that you eat. Plus, by adding in more vegetables, we're increasing the number of vegetables that we eat in a day. More vegetables means more vitamins, more minerals, more antioxidants. It means a healthier you. So if we can make sure that we're getting in as many vegetables as possible, we're gonna be doing ourselves a huge favor. So to start my beans, I've got my pan just heating up. I'm gonna put about 2 teaspoons of olive oil in the bottom. And then coat my pan. To this, I'm gonna add 1 chopped up carrot. One chopped bell pepper. I have a yellow one. Any color works. And half of an onion. And we're gonna let those start to cook down a little bit before we add in the beans. Can you hear that delicious sizzle? All right. I will talk over the sizzling vegetables. So, where's mine? Oh, here we go. So we talked about choosing whole grains. When it comes to beans, if you have time to cook beans from dried beans, good on you. That's awesome. Take advantage of it. I feel like most people don't, and I'm one of those people that doesn't. I wish I did, because I feel like those beans always taste better. But if you're getting beans, I would encourage you to getting canned beans, I would encourage you to try to find a bean that doesn't have any added salt. Or if there is added salt, it at least says that it's less or half. There's all different ways that they label it, but whatever the lowest amount of added salt that you can find is, that's what we want to go for. And why do we want to try to cut back on salt? Well, there's so much added salt in all of the foods that we eat, that we buy pre-made. We love salt, we love to add it to things, and if we can find ways to cut back, that's really important for our health. The reason being is that extra salt makes our blood pressure go up, and we already talked about all of the reasons why we want to try to avoid having high blood pressure. So, if we can avoid adding salt to a dish by choosing a canned bean that doesn't have any added salt, we're heading in a better direction. Little tiny changes make a really big difference in the long run. So, if you can't find beans that have no added salt or lower sodium, then the most important thing you can do is to make sure that you rinse the beans very well, because that will remove some of the salt from the beans, and that will help too. Little things add up. So making these little tiny steps makes a big difference. So these are starting to cook down a little bit. I am going, well, wait on that for a minute. So let's just talk about rice and beans in general for a minute. So at the beginning I was saying that it's considered, a really carb-dense meal. It's not very good for us maybe, but I don't think that that's the case. If you choose brown rice, that's going to increase the fiber that's in the dish. The beans in and of themselves give you a lot of fiber. And if you're counting carbs, if you're watching your blood sugar and you need to count carbs for insulin reasons, or just counting carbs in general because you think it's fun, having the extra fiber actually negates the amount of carb in there. The reason in the dish. The reason is that fiber counts as a carb, but we don't digest it. It doesn't absorb into our bloodstream. And so you can always look at a food and take the amount of carb that's listed on a label subtract the amount of fiber that's in there, and then you're gonna actually have a more accurate idea of how much carb you would get from the meal. So increasing the fiber in the meal helps to balance your blood sugars. Choosing a whole grain will do that. Adding more vegetables will do that. So just keep that in mind. The other thing about rice and beans is it is a perfect vegetarian protein, plant-based protein meal. So when we think about protein, we think, oh, a piece of meat, some chicken, some beef, some pork, some lamb, fish, eggs, what else? Milk, yogurt, cheese. All of these things give us protein, but they're all animal products. And as a result, they come with some fats that we don't necessarily need as much of as we're getting. So in the American diet, we eat a lot more animal proteins than we really need. If you can find some meatless meals that still give you a good source of protein, that's going to be another really good choice that you can make to improve your health in the long run. Let me add my beans, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. So my veggies are cooking down, and now I'm going to very gracefully, hopefully without dumping them on the ground or in my stove, add my beans into my vegetables. If you're just joining now, this is Learning Kitchen Live, episode 21. We're making rice and beans and apple hand pies. All right, so I've got my beans and my vegetables in here. I'm gonna add a half a cup of water. Woo, it's getting sizzly. And now it's quiet. And that's just gonna help to let everything heat through, soften a little bit, meld flavors. Then in addition to that, I am going to add a spice mix to enhance flavor because again, I'm not adding any salt. So in here I have cumin, garlic powder because I didn't have any fresh garlic. You can use fresh garlic if you have it. It's a little bit of chili powder. I didn't want to add oregano to my beans. I don't know why. I never like putting oregano in the beans, but if you like oregano and you'd like to add them to your beans, by all means, go for it. All right, so those are my spices, and then I am gonna also add the juice of a lime. So I rolled this lime before I cut it in half, and that lets the juices start to squeeze out and makes it easier to squeeze. And I'm just gonna squeeze the juice out, and I'm actually gonna just throw this right in here and let that simmer in as well. And that's gonna let the oils from the zest from the skin of the lime also add more lime flavor to the beans. And I'm gonna rinse my hands, hold on. So, adding an acid like lime juice or lemon juice, orange juice, vinegars to dishes, that enhances flavors in the same way that salt would. It's a different flavor. It won't taste exactly the same as if you were adding salt, but it will still make the flavors bolder and brighter and more intense. And so if you can find ways to replace some of the salt that you use by adding an acid, like the lemon or the lime or a vinegar, you're gonna be getting lots of flavor without all that added salt. And that's our goal. Okay, I'm just gonna grab my pot lid. And stick this on my back burner to simmer for a few minutes and let all those flavors come together. So we were talking about vegetable proteins and how we want to try to be eating more meatless meals. Well, when we think about something like rice and beans, as I was saying, it's considered a perfect protein. The reason being is that there are something called amino acids that make up proteins. They're the building blocks of proteins. And when you take a bite of a piece of meat like chicken or beef or lamb, you're getting all 9 essential amino acids. They're all in that piece of meat. If you eat rice, which is a whole grain, or brown rice, which is a whole grain, you'll get a little smattering of those amino acids. You won't get all 9 of them. If you eat beans, you'll get a different mixture of those amino acids, not all 9 of them. But if you combine those 2 foods together, you'll cover your bases. And so when we're thinking about meatless meals, what we want to try to do is make sure that we are combining a grain, which is something like the brown rice or whole wheat bread or corn, quinoa, amaranth, bulgur, millet. I know there are lots more that I can't think of right now. Oats with either a legume, and so what we think of legumes are beans or lentils or peanuts, or a seed. So pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, or a nut. So nuts or seeds. So pecans, almonds, you know, all the other ones out there. So rice and beans is again going to be that combination of a grain and a legume. So it gives you all those amino acids when they're combined, perfect protein. Another example would be something like hummus. So hummus is made from garbanzo beans and tahini. Tahini is a paste of sesame seeds. So the combination of those beans and the sesame seeds gives you a perfect protein. So you can think of that hummus as giving you all of the amino acids, balancing out those protein needs that you have, but without eating any meat. And as I was saying before, we eat a lot of meat in in the American diet, and our bodies don't really need as much animal meat as we're eating. So if we can find protein from other sources, that's a great way to also improve our health. Okay, and I meant to say this earlier, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to post them in the comment section below. If I see them come up, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, one of my colleagues who was potentially watching will be able to answer for you as well. So we have one more component to this rice and beans dish that I want to show you how to put together. And again, this is something you can do in a flash, but first I'm just going to check on my pie. It's getting there. It's not golden brown yet, but we're getting closer. Okay, so for a garnish to my rice and beans, and garnish is just making it seem even fancier. This is just gonna give it an extra crunch. So rice and beans, you know, it's a kind of mushy food. By adding crunch, we're gonna make it an even more enjoyable dish. We're gonna be adding more vegetables, which is gonna be giving us more of the things that we need, the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, the fiber. We're also going to be adding more flavor this way. So if you can layer in a wide variety of flavors, you hopefully won't even notice that there's no salt in the dish at all. So what I've got here, I'm just gonna grab my tray or my cutting board back so that I can move this up and y'all can see. Hopefully I won't light anything on fire. So I've got a bowl of arugula here, and I really love arugula because it has a lovely peppery, spicy flavor. You don't have to use arugula. You can use spinach, you can use lettuce, you can use cabbage. Cabbage would be excellent in this as well. I should have gotten cabbage, that would have been great, but this is gonna be good too. And then I've got cucumber, half a cucumber, diced up. I know you know how to make a salad, but we're waiting for my beans to end, or finish cooking, and my pie to finish cooking, so you get to see me make a salad. So I've got my arugula, I've got my cucumber, and then I'm gonna put in some radish. Again, these are all just gonna give nice crunch, bright flavors. Yum, yum, yum. I haven't had lunch yet, I am so hungry. And then avocado. So avocado is a heart-healthy fat. It is a fat. One of my former teachers, Sandy Allenin, used to say that if you eat a lot of avocados, you start to look like an avocado, right? It's true. They're good for you, they're delicious, but you want to just remember that they are a fat. All right, so I just pitted it, and then I sliced it in place. And I'm just going to go around with my spoon, scoop it out, and decide if I want the big tongs or the little tongs. We'll go for little, they're teeny. And just mix it up a little bit. You know, make it pretty. Spread things out. Now for this, and this is gonna go on top of our rice and beans. This is a very confusing tong for whatever reason. So on top of this, I'm gonna make a really quick salad dressing, vinaigrette. It's not vinegar though, it's lime juice. So I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of olive oil. If you think the olive oil flavor is too potent for this, you could use canola oil as well. And then I'm going to squeeze in the juice. I'm gonna get my fancy dancy tool to do this with. I am going to squeeze in the juice of 1 lime. And you can adjust the amount of lime juice that you have in this based on what your preferences are, whatever you like. All right. And my oven is beeping at me. Put these aside. And then I'm gonna put in a little bit of cumin powder. Again, flavoring on theme. I would say about 1/4 teaspoon. Just gonna shake it. If you want to do like something spicy, you could add some more chili. You could do garlic powder. Coriander would be really nice. You can chop up fresh herbs if they're available. Cilantro, oregano. I'm just gonna whip this together. It comes together super quickly. So you'll notice that it goes from, you know what the color of oil would be, you know, it's kind of translucent. But then as you whip it, let me get a little bit closer, it becomes opaque. And that tells us that it's all come together. I'm just gonna give it a little, yum. A little bit more cumin. And then this is gonna be my dressing for my salad to top my rice and beans. All right. So let's assemble everything and take a peek. Pie is looking yummy. It smells delicious. I think it's going to need another few moments to bake, and I don't want to keep you all sitting here, but we'll pull it out and take a peek after we've assembled our rice and beans. So I've got my rice. The portion size of this is about 1/2 cup of rice with all those delicious tomatoes. And then, oh, the beans are bubbly and veggie full. My veggierific beans, about 1/3 cup of that. As you can see, it looks beautiful on its own. Lots of colors, lots of flavors. And then I'm just gonna throw a radish on the floor. But I'm gonna get a little bit of my arugula, cucumber, avocado, radish salad here. And drizzle it with my cumin lime dressing. And I have got a delicious lunch that I cannot wait to taste. Let me pull out my pie and let you take a peek. And you can imagine how beautiful it's gonna be when it's fully cooked and all golden brown. But here we go. So super easy hand pie, no added sugar. Cut this in half, quarters, and you've got a great dessert for whoever's at home. And rice and beans, again, with no added salt. A very, very spicy, well, I don't know if it's spicy, but flavorful dish. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to post them. And I look forward to speaking with you all again in the future. Tune in next week for our next edition of Learning Kitchen Live. Thanks. Bye.